p.m.
What up, nation? Welcome to another edition, and I'm very, very happy to say another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Wise stream. CK013 here, joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG. Y'all know him. It's Paulie D. Paulie, we are here to finish the NBA season, get some NBA playoffs, and we didn't know if this day would come, man.
We did not, and NBA have missed the most of anything. We weren't like ready for football, wasn't coming yet, so I feel like that's just kind of like on schedule. But NBA, we got interrupted, right when it was kind of getting good, right before an awesome playoff race. But I mean, the system, the style, like what they're doing, I think it's gonna make for a really, really exciting like end of the season. It'll be a really fun playoffs for like watching as a fan and playing DFS as well.
I completely agree with you, man. I think it's gonna be unique, that's for sure. It's gonna be very unique. It's gonna be something different. We've got certain teams missing teammates and picking up other guys that weren't even in the league the whole season. We've got, players being caged up in a bubble. No such thing as home court advantage. Even if there was a home court, there's still no fans. But travel in the NBA, that's a big piece of it, right? Like, and you know me, man. When it comes to even betting on the games, like you could really ride the schedule and make a lot of money in betting. So while it's unfortunate we don't have that from a fantasy perspective, it's also interesting because you might be in a situation where if you don't pay attention to the schedule, you catch a team that's in like a 4-6 that's traveled, and really it's like mismatches, right? This team's in a 4-6. They've traveled here all the way across the country, and now they're playing a team that's had 3 days of rest. You're not gonna have that anymore. Even when you have teams that maybe have somewhat rested, and we only have 2 weeks worth of games. Nobody has to travel. They're all just in the bubble, doing dirties, except for Lou Will, who decided to stop at a famous Atlanta strip club because he loved the chicken wings. Bro,
everybody knows.
Oh, yeah, of course. Everybody that knows him knows that. So everybody else is just a hater. You know, it's funny though. No, it's not funny. But the Miami Marlins, we know, basically half their team caught COVID, and we're hearing that the rumor is, of course, that they went to a strip club. And before that, I had heard reports that they didn't actually catch it in Philly. They caught it in Atlanta. So, hey, just saying, Lou. Just saying, Lou. Use your head, man.
Just saying.
Wrong head. Head up here. Use the head up here. You know what I mean? But anyway, man, talk to me a little bit about, what you think. I agree with you that from a fantasy perspective, it's going to be great. And just from an entertainment perspective, it's going to be awesome. And there's going to be some storylines, I'm sure, guys breaking the bubble. But what do you expect to see from some of these teams, man? Like playoff atmospheres or what are you thinking?
So, like, 90% of the teams remaining are like in the hunt. There's like a handful of teams that are kind of thrown in the towel because of like injuries or main players decided not to play. Like the Wizards, John Wall's still not going to be back and Brad Beal's not playing, so they're pretty much punting. You know what I mean? The Nets, they're going to punt. None of their like star players are back. They're very, very thin. They got like Chris Chioza starting. But for the most part, they chopped off that like the worst 8 teams. So like every team has something to play for. You're not going to have that like, the 30th ranked team against the 27th in a game that doesn't matter, or like the 30th ranked team against a team that does care, and the team that care just like blows them out. Games should be, very similar to like the college basketball's, playoff system where every game matters and they're all going to be played like, they need to be won. So that's great for minutes. That's great for projecting. And, we shouldn't run into many scratches because of that. Unless it's COVID.
Oh, yeah. And if that's the case, something's up because these guys are quarantined. They're supposed to be staying within certain areas. So I'm excited, man, like you said. I like the comparison to the NBA, to the March Madness tournament kind of. Especially once we get into the playoffs, it's going to be exciting. But even before then, this is basically the playoffs now. Because if you made the cut, that means you were close enough to where the playoffs were at least within reach. So I agree. Yeah. And unfortunately, like you said, Bradley Beal opted out. And, you got certain teams where they're just not going to, they don't have it. And season. So they'll use this as an opportunity to get their young players some extra time, some extra run on the court, in like an exciting environment. But it's gonna be fun. Very, very excited to I know most of the Y streams. We're not sure if you'll be on. We're probably doing a lot of solo, at least at the beginning. But we'll be talking, man. We'll be talking NBA. We'll be talking MLB.
That,
We'll be talking every
that's
day.
another factor. Is they're like Christmas Day slates pretty much every
Every
day,
day.
where you get a game or two at between noon and 2, and then those games end, and the next teams that are waiting to play on that court come on. It's like every 2.5 hours, another game's gonna start. Pretty much every day you got between like 5 and 8 games. So it's that Christmas one game plays, it ends, then you late swap some guys maybe that you have going in the next game and kind of adjust as the slate kind of finishes. The slate's going to be much more drawn out than what they normally are.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be crazy, man. You're gonna have like you said, Christmas all day. Like you think if you play MLB and NBA, like us, of course, it is nonstop DFS, baby. It is nonstop. You're always gonna
Yeah,
have something to check on, something to update, some news that breaks out, and you're gonna care what it is. If it's gonna be wild. And I think hockey starts on Saturday too. It's just nonstop, nonstop. Just make sure you subscribe to WiseTake.com. And at the very least, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitch. Hit the like button on the videos because the likes really help us out and allow us to continue to do free content. With that said, I told you I hate that word, but like, there's no other way to say it. You know what I mean? Like, I can't stand it. What are we gonna do? Hey. We're gonna start with the first game. We'll go game by game today. Utah Jazz visiting I say visiting. Utah Jazz against the New Orleans Pelicans. We've got the higher total of the two games, the 225 total. That's actually up from 220.5 where it opened. The Pelicans minus 2.5 at home, and you pointed out to me earlier that the biggest piece of information we're waiting on from this game, maybe even on the slate, is Zion Williamson's status. He's currently questionable. I'm gonna give the
yep,
floor to you, Paulie. I know you've been brushing up on some NBA. Talk to us.
yeah. So the Jazz are the fourth seeded team in the West. They're pretty much guaranteed to be in the playoffs, but seeding. And then the Pelicans are the 10th seed currently. Need to win some games to still make the playoffs. So very hungry. Zion, game time decision. He left the bubble. He had to quarantine. He hasn't practiced much. They've just been very cautious with him. I think he's going to play. I really do. But, maybe not as many minutes. Who knows? But they do need to win. So I think they're gonna put out their best team. And then for the Jazz, Bojan Bogdanovic, the only guy that they're missing. But that was a starter, a guy that would have got a ton of minutes. And that's going to make some of their bench guys a little bit more valuable. I'll start with them. Basically, you're going to get Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, who have the friction of the Corona drama, that no one really knows how they're going to play together. You've got Mike Conley moving back into the starting role, cheap on all sites, so we do have some interest in him. You've got um, who else? Joe Ingles and Royce O'Neal going to be most likely starting. And those aren't official, but that's what everyone's kind of projecting at this point. So Jordan Clarkson's going to get a lot of minutes and a lot of shots off the bench. Georges Niang may get some more minutes, but you pretty much the starting five and Jordan Clarkson, those six guys are all going to get minutes into the 30s. And unless the game blows out one way or another, may have the tightest minute pool of any team out there, where their starters are going to play 35 apiece almost. So Clarkson's really cheap. He's going to be extremely popular for value. I don't see a ton of ways around it where he's priced on both sites, but you're definitely going to want a piece. They're getting paced up. Conley's interesting for cheap. We know that whenever there was someone missing from the Jazz lineup, Mitchell would pretty much, his usage would go up. So, him, Gobert, especially if Zion misses, they're going to have no size to guard him. But even with Zion, Gobert's got a significant rebounding and size advantage. So I really like a lot of the Jazz. I'll be mixing them in with, I would say, Gobert, Clarkson and Mitchell being my favorites, but also having interest in Royce, Ingles, and Conley just a little bit. And then the Pelicans, if Zion plays, I like him, and then I like, one of the three guards. If he's out, then their key players' minutes become very, very, condensed, and I kind of like a lot of them. But, for size, they're going to need a little bit of help if Zion misses, and they don't have much. They got, Melly, and then a bunch of unproven young kids like Jackson Hayes. So if he's out, then we like the bigs on the Jazz a bit more, and then we like some of the Pelicans guys like Brandon Ingram, Drew Holiday, and Lonzo Ball. If he's in, I think I just like two of them, and kind of nervous about everybody's minutes if he's in. So he's like the key piece there, but definitely like the Jazz, and then the Pelicans. If Zion's out, I like a ton of them. If he's in, then not as much, but 2 games late, got to get some exposure. The only bench guy on the Pelicans I'm really interested in is Josh Hart. And, you can fit him in for value, but there's a couple pieces like Clarkson, similar price, that I kind of find myself gravitating to more so. But if you're building a lot, I would also get some Josh Hart exposure.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Laker-Clipper game, I would assume, from your average fan, seems to be more exciting, and rightfully so. And there's some questionable players there too. We'll get to. But we know Utah Jazz. We know New Orleans likes to play very fast. We know that Utah is a team that typically plays slow, but this year particularly, their defense has been suspect. And now you factor in that you have some missing players. I agree. I think it is a very interesting game from fantasy perspective. It's got the higher total sitting at 225. Obviously, if Zion is out, it's going to make the other Pelican players more interesting, like Brandon Ingram, like you said. Lonzo Ball, who I'm sure is dying to play. Whoever else. And however, if Zion Williamson is in, I'm with you. It's really just Zion that I'm looking at. I expect him to kind of hog some of that usage. Maybe I'll have some where we pivot to a guy like Ingram. I don't necessarily want them together, because you want one guy to excel in that role. They're both going to try. You think Zion's going to get the first opportunity? He's the bigger guy. He's going to go down there and try to depot his way. But if he's having a bad day or anything like that, then you can expect a guy like Ingram to kind of step it up. But since Zion and when Zion and Ingram are on the court together, it's been Zion really taking away a lot from Ingram. So I'm with you on that. We'll wait on the news. And then you mentioned on the Utah side, man, Clarkson taking a ton of shots. I'm with you. Should be taking a ton of shots. It's almost a shame that these games are on such a short slate, because they seem like great pieces if they were part of like a 4-game slate. I mean, give us a third game. You know what I mean? And I think it could really make some interesting lineups. But I'm with you for the most part, pretty much all the way. Let's move it over to the next game, which is...
Look, one question for you.
Yeah.
If Zion misses, right, you got Derek Favors, 5'8", against his former team. They normally don't play him a ton of minutes, but they got nothing after that. You got Melly, who's really like a stretch 4, who will get some minutes, but I don't see them playing Jackson Hayes and Okafor a ton. I'm not sure which of those two. I think the word on the street is Hayes right now, but if he's out, there's something there in terms of value and with those bigs, I would say, right?
There's got to be.
Is it Favors, or would you rather down to Melly?
Oh man, I'm always tempted to go Melly, especially because he's always so cheap, and he's on DraftKings, especially because of the 3-pointers. But at the same time, from a usage perspective, I feel like Favors, even if Favors only gets his 22, 23, whatever, I just think his usage should be higher. And you mentioned the narrative, right? He's been playing against some of his old friends, his old teammates. So I kind of like Favors in that role. But again, I'm always tempted with Melly, man, because he's so damn cheap. He's been good to us this year, Melly, man. He has. He's been good to us. He has.
And he shoots the 3. He blocks shots. He can get you there.
Yeah.
Make value.
Right. Even if he only gets 17 minutes, 18 minutes, he could still do the dirty in that time, because he could be efficient in that time. But I still think if I have to, which direction am I leaning, I would probably say Favors. But very tempted. Good question. That'll make you think. Do some thinking on that one. Let's move on to the next game. Some NBA fans may call this the marquee game. We got the Los Angeles Clippers, Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers currently 4.5 point favorites. This total went down from 217.5 to 215. We know the Lakers have had Avery Bradley opt out. Rajon Rondo got hurt immediately into camp, and then they've got J.R. Smith. Man, finds his way on a winning team with LeBron in the end. And then I think the Lakers also got Joakim Noah. Is that right? The
Clippers.
Clippers. I'm sorry, the Clippers got Joakim Noah. And Montrezl Harrell's out. Lou Williams, we just talked about. He stopped for some wangs and thangs at a strip club in Atlanta. He is now expected to miss, along with Montrezl. Talk to me about the Clippers and Lakers.
Yeah, so on top of those two, major Clippers being out, you also have Shamet and Pat Bev questionable. I think they're both like closer to probable and expected to play at this point, but keep an eye on that. That could create some opportunity. But, the Clippers without Lou Will and Montrez against the Lakers, it's rough for them to be coming in. Haven't played a ton of minutes as a unit yet. Marcus Morris is a new piece that's going to get a lot of minutes. Not knowing, they also have Reggie Jackson, J. Michael Green. They did bring Joakim Noah, although I don't think he sees anything significant. They're a tough team to gauge, and do they hang in there without Lou Williams and Montrezl against the Lakers and all that size? It's a really interesting dynamic. So, I think whenever any one of those Montrezl or Lou missed, like Paul George and Kawhi's usage were just super solid. So, like both of them, Paul George is cheap on both sites. He's going to be popular. Kawhi may not be, because you kind of got to choose between him, AD, LeBron, or if you're taking two, then you're also not getting George. So he might be the cheapest of like the stud players on the slate, making him kind of interesting to me. And then, Marcus Morris is just going to have to play minutes. Ivica Zubac is going to have to play a lot. Like Montrezl Harrell played, 30 minutes a game, and in games that were going to be close and meant something in the playoffs, he was probably going to play more. Zubac against his former team, that's kind of interesting. And then J. Michael Green, if Zubac gets into foul trouble or they're kind of getting run off the court, he's going to get a bunch of minutes at the big with Montrez out. Both very cheap. They're both really interesting value plays, especially on DraftKings with like the double-double bonus. So I like a bunch of the Clippers, and if Pat Bev and Shamet get ruled out, then I think like Reggie Jackson would become a firm play as well. But if those guys play, they're kind of all in play. Paul George, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, Zubac, J. Michael Green, and even Pat Bev if he is going to play. And people are probably going to forget Pat Bev because they're not really talking about him playing just yet. And there's a ton of other guards. So those six, and if it's not Pat Bev, then he's ruled out. And then Reggie Jackson. There's about six Clippers that are very, very interesting. And Kawhi Leonard's probably my favorite. That'll be low owned. For the Lakers, and then like the only way that they hang in here is if Kawhi has a big game as well, in my opinion. So with like extra rebounds out there, I think he's gonna have like a shot at a triple double. And if the game's close, he's really smashing. For the Lakers, similar kind of deal. They're missing a couple guys that got minutes, and we're expecting to see LeBron kind of running the point, KCP, Danny Green on the wings, AD, and then their big rotation of like JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. And you'll see Kuzma come off the bench first for probably either Danny Green or KCP. He was really aggressive in like their scrimmage games, kind of expecting to see an increase in his usage as the playoffs get here. He played really well too. Like he had a game where he shot like 7 of 8 from 3. And it just looks like he's kind of like, elevated his game with the time off. And then their bench is after Kuzma, like Caruso's expected to get solid minutes as the backup point guard, although it could also go to Quinn Cook. We have J.R. Smith back with the team, who played really well in the couple scrimmages. And you also have Dion Waiters with the team, who took 19 shots in the final scrimmage. That was without LeBron and AD. But another guy with experience who can hit shots in the fourth that they could go to, as well as Markieff Morris. So the Lakers are really deep on their bench. I think if you're building a lot of teams, getting a handful of exposures to all those guys, like between 5 and 10, and one of them hits, that could be like the super low ownership value play that gets you where you need to go. But of the value plays, I guess J.R. Smith has kind of like the most ceiling and most likely minutes with them missing those guards. Followed after Kuzma, then maybe like Alex Caruso. The other guys I'm just playing because there's a chance that they could be the better low owned value plays on the slate. And as for the starters, they're all kind of interesting as well. Like the Clippers lacking size makes me really interested in AD, although he is questionable or probable at this point. And that roller coaster always exists where he could get to the locker room at any minute. Danny Green and KCP without Avery Bradley in games that matter, that are close, they're going to get a lot of minutes just for their defense and 3-point shooting. And then LeBron's going to be on the court all the time, running the point through him, which makes him interesting as well. It's like hard to just go with him and AD on the slate, but you can build teams with them in it. And, they certainly have like the highest ceilings of the studs, because the first game, there's no one even like over 9K. It's like a different level. LeBron, AD, Kawhi are like the three studs on the slate. And I don't know, both of the main sites, you can get at least two of those guys in pretty solid lineup. So, I like AD and LeBron. I like Kyle Kuzma a lot. And then, the rest of the Lakers are just guys that I'll get some exposure to. But, their usage could be low. And the fact that, like, of the starters, Danny Green and KCP, they have some competition behind them with Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith, Caruso. So, they could like not get enough minutes to do enough, or have to be super efficient in a little bit lesser minutes as they kind of feel out their role, because they know they're going to make the playoffs and have, a top 3 seed. Like, they don't need to win. They probably need to figure out who's going to play more in these last 8 games. So interesting game. And, also does it stay close, where the first game I think is much more likely to stay close and back and forth.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even though we have a higher total in the New Orleans game, I kind of expect a lot of ownership to be in this Laker game, especially with some of the players, like you said, for the Clippers, guys like Zubac, and just because guys that have no traditional backup, or at least what we're accustomed to. So it makes a lot of sense. The Clippers, like you said, they brought in Noah, but they're still missing Montrezl Harrell, who played a majority of their center minutes. They could work in. They can go small ball. We know that Morris can play the 5. Apparently, we've just seen him do it.
Yep.
And like you said, no Lou Will off the bench, man. So that Kawhi is gonna do a lot. That's one thing about the Clippers. They don't have a ton of like true like guys that can just score at will. They really don't. It's like they have a couple guys that run the floor, and they're responsible for getting the ball. Either they score it or they get it to the guy to score. But you take Lou Williams off the court, it's a whole different ballgame. Not to say a guy like Pat Bev, who's questionable, may not even play, but not to say a guy like Pat Bev couldn't do it. But missing a guy like Lou Williams, like that's pretty much Kawhi Leonard's break of scoring right there. Is when Lou and Montrez are in there doing the dirty, and now Montrez is gone too. So I'm with you. Kawhi Leonard just seems like if this game is going to stay close, I just don't see how Kawhi Leonard doesn't have a monster game. And that's the other scenario, is this game doesn't stay close. And it's just a complete shit fest. And you were better off stacking the first game anyway. So I do lean towards a lot of these Clipper players out of the game. But like you said, I kind of prefer the first game. I just think it's got a better likelihood of staying close. I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive. And yeah, I mean, I'm actually really concerned about the Clippers with all their injuries. Because the Lakers, I mean, they got players, man. They're relatively deep. They could score. They still got their bigs, right? Like, it's like, I don't know. Wild things.
Yeah, it's tough. But, say like, the Clippers do bring it, it'll be an awesome game. But
sure.
I don't plan to build many teams, or any actually, with like the Clippers blowing out the Lakers in mind. I'm only going to have, it's either close or the Lakers blow them out, and the Bills that would follow that kind of game flow.
Agreed. We're gonna get into some questions. We do got some people hanging out with us late night. It's currently 12:25 a.m. on the East Coast. We got people hanging, man, hanging and banging. We got a lot of work ahead of a lot of work cut out for us for tomorrow. But shout out to MG. Shout out to IMAX. He says they're back. Yes, sir. Mercamill TWD finally back with the money signs. Money bags. That's right. Money bags. I'm with it. Chris Cox, what's happening? The NWO sucks says I like Rudy a lot. Rudy Gobert. The Corona beef starter himself, man. The man that started it all in the NBA. He's a pioneer, if you will, right? You can't say he's a follower. He starts trends. You know what I mean? He starts trends. We got a question here from our boy Moochie. We see him in the MLB streams all the time. Any love for J.R. Smith?
For sure. Like, I think it's in a Lakers blowout build more than the close game, but like you need a couple guys in that value range, and like outside of Jordan Clarkson, he's probably got like the most likelihood to like have a ceiling with the minutes he gets at his price. Like I could see him playing, like a handful of minutes in the first half, but then the game blows out and he finishes the fourth quarter and gets like 16 minutes and gets you like a 22 or 23. Like he played really well, really, really well in their scrimmage. Assists, shots, points. Like if he gets some time, he's going to take his shots. So I like him a little bit, but I'm not convinced he would play enough if the game's close all the way.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I saw bits and pieces of the scrimmages, and it seemed like every time JR was on the court, he like had permission to go and shoot the ball. Like it seemed like he was put there to try and score. He would take uncomfortable shots that he's used to taking, and I say uncomfortable because for most people they would be, but J.R. Smith is used to those kind of shots. That's how he's kind of made a living, is making those weird, difficult kind of shots and just driving the ball to the hole no matter what. And it does seem like from a tournament perspective, if the game script goes in your favor and they have some extra garbage time, or if J.R. Smith is just hyper efficient, he can get there. But I do agree it's hard to envision him being a real big member, a real big part of this rotation if the game is tight. So it's all about the builds, which way you're going to do the builds. If you got a close game script, maybe, then you need him to be hyper efficient. And maybe the more efficient he is, the longer he plays. But again, I think he kind of doesn't, because if he's playing with LeBron and you don't want that. You don't really want him playing with those both, right? You want him at least getting a split and only having to play with one of them. Because if J.R. Smith is on the court with LeBron and Anthony Davis, J.R. Smith is going to be standing in the corner. And that's not necessarily the J.R. Smith you want. You want a J.R. Smith that's going to have the ball. He's going to play some ISO. And, one of those guys are off the court. They're going to let's take a couple positions off and give it to J.R. So I'm with you. I think he does fit the blowout build game script much better. Let's see. Chris Cox says NBA, MLB, UFC, hell yeah, sports are back. Yes, sir.
That's Gap.
Juice, what's up, Juice? Good to see you, Juice. He says Juice is just checking in. How's it going, Nation? There you go. What up? OS says fade the LA Big Four, hoping they don't hit value because it's a blowout, or they don't get run because it's a seeding game. So, what are your thoughts on potentially fading that late game?
I mean, it's not. You can't fade it. You either have to do like they don't play a ton of minutes because the game gets out of hand, or they just, want to like coast in and, build their players up and they don't give them a full, allotment of minutes. Then you got to have the second unit guys that are going to do it because there's only 2 games. So it's not like you fade the game, but you could fade the studs and kind of game stack the Utah thing and just play a couple of like the value second unit guys. But I think you have to have exposure to this game at least a little bit, because if it's not the studs, then the value players on kind of both teams are going to be the best value plays on the slate.
Holla. Moochie Mob Ties once again. Favorite Clippers players?
So it's Kawhi, because like they're so small. I think he's going to lead the team in rebounds, or second to Zubac if Zubac gets enough minutes. And he's going to do a lot of the scoring. Without Lou Williams and Montrez, that's a lot of shots off the floor. So him and Paul George, are going to have a ceiling in terms of shot attempts. So he's just like very likely to have a ceiling in all of his stats, even steals with a little rust for both teams. He should get a bunch of those. I like him the most, and I think he'll be the lowest owned. Think that if he has a really good game where Paul George is priced, it's hard for him not to kind of exceed value as well if that game's close. So I like both of them, or like pairing them up where you do. And then Marcus Morris went for like 18 in their last scrimmage with like 5 rebounds. He's kind of gonna have similar role probably to Montrezl Harrell, except he'll probably start, but he's going to be playing the 4 a lot and tasked with like kind of being down low, and he may get, half a dozen rebounds. And if he gets hot shooting and the game is close, he's probably going to be their number 3, like shot attempt guy. Then Zubac, they're just going to need because the Lakers are so big, and he is like a very efficient player where he gets a ton of his points off of rebounds, offensive. And then, on the defensive end, he's going to gobble up a lot of the missed shots. So he's likely to get you that double-double. And there's a chance that he plays like 30 minutes. And he's just such a good point per minute player. He's very interesting. And as I mentioned, Pat Bev, like, he's just going to be like the forgotten Clipper. And he's 4-1, I think, on DK. And if they play well and he does play and get 25 to 30 minutes, like, if the Clippers play well, it's because they have like this attitude, and like Pat Bev's usually like the leader of that, and they'll need him defensively. So he's interesting too. They're all kind of really appealing, but it's like I'll either have a bunch of the Clippers the way that they're priced, or not many at all.
Yeah, fair enough. OS says thoughts on leaving over $1,000 on the table.
Which site?
He or she doesn't specify. If you can answer which site, it would help us. But just in general, I guess, this leading salary on the table. NBA is a sport where you usually want to make the most of your salary, right? But on a 2-game slate, all bets are kind of off. What are your thoughts?
So I'm trying to build a lineup where I do that and see if it's like acceptable. On DraftKings, like, I really felt like I needed every dollar to get 2 studs into my lineup. But I think if you're game stacking on DraftKings, that Utah game where you're going like, 5+ from that game, there's builds where that actually could happen. But if you're involving LeBron and, Kawhi or AD, then you really shouldn't have any money left up there, or minimal. And if it's FanDuel, stand by. Gotta take a look.
Stand by with the FanDuel though. While you're looking that up, Muji says, how do you feel about Anthony Davis? He's questionable. So assuming he plays, I guess.
I mean, he's just like, they've got no size besides Zubac, and he would, destroy him in athleticism. And he may even get Zubac in foul trouble. And like, he should be like as healthy as he's been with that time off. Like, he's one of the guys that'll really should have benefited from it. I know he has like this minor thing that he's dealing with, but he's in such a good spot. Bigs against the Clippers without Montrezl this time. It's, if the game's close, he's going to smash. The concern is if the Lakers run away with it, they'll be probably the most cautious with him.
I think it makes sense.
Like AD or LeBron, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always prefer Anthony Davis when they're both healthy, because like you said, like Anthony Davis, you were like rebounds, block shots, those kind of things. You're not really relying on anyone else, right? Like, you're just gonna go get it. Matchup wise, with or without Harrell, he was in a great spot. It's just that much better now. Now, I guess that depends on how much we see Joakim Noah. But even if Joakim Noah were to come in, Joakim Noah is a guy who's been known for his defense, right? He's not an offensive player. He's known for grabbing boards, playing defense. But your guy can't be in game shape to that level to where you can guard Anthony Davis. If he's going to try to guard AD, he's going to foul out. You know what I'm saying? So you can kind of take him out of the equation. And you're looking at him and Zubac, him and Marcus Morris, whoever else they want to throw. To me, if Anthony Davis is in, he's just in such a, like you said, juicy spot. If I have to pick one of the two, I'm picking him. The only way I want LeBron over him is if he's out. And then, yeah, sure, I want LeBron because his use is going to be cray-cray. But also keep in mind, like you said, what worries me also is, like you said, the Lakers already know they're making it to the playoffs. So that is about seeding, and what is seeding worth at this point? There's no road team, so those little, like, I don't know, like those little things don't seem to matter so much.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think if this game's close, this particular matchup, they'll have the pride to like want to win, and it'll be great.
Right.
But if one team kind of gets a lead, they'll be quick to say like, shut this thing down. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, you're not going to see Kawhi out there if they're down by like 15 plus in the fourth. Like, they're
No.
just going to preserve them. But
Yeah.
if it's close, they've played a couple times, and like there's been a lot of emotion in those, and like, they're projected to be the two best teams. So like, they want to have we won the series going into the potential matchup down the road.
100. I agree. A couple more questions here. Juice, what up, Juice? He says, in case Zubac gets in foul trouble, do you think Noah can play anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes? I had mentioned that my concern is Noah getting into foul trouble because he's more aggressive on the defensive end. What are your thoughts, Paulie?
I just don't think so. I think Noah is in case Zubac gets injured. Like, that's why he's on the roster. But I think they're fine going small. A lot of other teams have, like the Rockets, where you just plan to outrun and outshoot the opponent, and you're comfortable with just having the one big guy. And whenever like the Lakers kind of go a little bit smaller, which they will, it's not like Dwight Howard and Vale McGee are going to be on the court the whole time. So there'll be times when AD's the 5, and you got like Kuzma at the 4, and they'll be fine with like J. Michael Green and doubling AD, and then having like Marquise Morris on Kuzma. So I just don't think he's a factor in this game. Maybe if it's a major blowout, but even then, I think maximum he'd play like 12 minutes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Now, if he comes out and he just kind of shocks everybody, here's the one thing I'll say about Joakim Noah. This is probably like the idea. If you're a coach or a team that has him, this is your ideal situation. Joakim Noah's biggest thing has always been his partying. He's a big time partier. Big reason he blames like New York. He says he was too lit for New York. New York was too lit for him. Whatever, right? Like he thrives in places. Obviously, those years in Chicago, he was young enough to do both. But he basically says, so you have an opportunity to have him locked up in a quarantine. He can't do nothing, can't go nowhere. You might actually see a different Joakim Noah, for better or worse. Doesn't mean it'll be better. Doesn't mean it'll be worse. I don't know. But you may see a different Joakim Noah than you're used to if the guy's not out there partying and doing his normal thing. Well, last question. We're gonna get up out of here. Our boy, Mr. Mob Ties. Best value plays for cash on this slate. You got to be site specific, guys. We don't know, man. If you're not site specific, it's hard to say because price matter. You know what I mean? Price matters. That's what I was trying to say. Pricing.
Like, Jordan Clarkson's probably the best value play on the slate on both sites at 4,200 with the volume of shots he's going to take. And even if he like has a terrible shooting day, he's going to get to the free throw line. They're getting paced way up. He's going to get some assists. Going to get a ton of minutes. Marcus Morris is super cheap. Going to get a ton of minutes. Him or Zubac, and like, I think Marcus Morris has the higher ceiling if the game were to be close. And then if Zion is out, then Melly at 4K and Favors at 5'8", maybe not exactly, but Melly for sure is a value play. That'd be really attractive. And then you got like, those are the best ones right there. Everything else is kind of like contingent on somebody getting ruled out, or a blowout. But I guess if I had to throw like one more in there, it'd be like Danny Green. He's 3,500. If the game is close, he's going to play 35 minutes. He may take a handful more shots. He, sometimes can get some blocks and steals. 3,500, he allows you to get a couple more studs in the lineup. He's kind of safe. He's like a cash game value play. And on a 2-game slate, that just means him a good value play.
I'm with it. I'm with it. Elliot says Noah will be the first player to leave quarantine. Don't disagree. I'd be surprised if he didn't, if he made it through the whole damn thing. But that's going to do it for us today, Nation. Appreciate you guys rocking with us for the first day of the restart of NBA. Not really a restart, more a resumption. But it's going to be a wild ride. This is obviously a 2-game slate to get us started. But the very next day, we've got some exciting stuff. If you're not a member of the WiseTake Nation, make sure you go check us out at WiseTake.com. We have day passes available for anybody who wants to try it out. Paulie D is writing our NBA articles. So if you want Paulie's takes, I'm not sure how many shows we could make because we got early slates, but Paulie D will be writing the core plays article for us at WiseTake.com. So make sure you go through, see what the Paulie D is up to, because if not, you'll get dirtied by the D, and you don't want to get dirtied by the D, do you? Maybe you do, and if you do, we don't judge, but I don't think you do. I don't think you do. Not by this D anyway. This is 8 Ds we're dealing with here, bro. I don't know. Sketchy. Paulie, anything in closing for the Nation before we get up out of here?
No, I mean, this is a take it easy, have some fun with the NBA. 2-game slates, but next day we got 6 awesome games, great slate. There could be an edge in NBA with the people who just haven't done any of the research, don't know the different roster changes, and there may be a lot of dead money out there. So jump on it early. I think there's money to be made in the NBA right now.
Right now. I completely agree. Like Paulie said, have some fun on this 2-gamer. Be ready for Friday. That is the first real legitimate slate. We're all super excited about that. So be ready, Nation. For Paulie D, for myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, make sure you hit that like button. Hit that fucking like button. And as always, good luck.